Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our session today. We're diving into the important topic of subject-verb agreement. The title of our presentation is Subject-Verb Agreement, and we might also explore some related subtopics. Over the next few slides, we'll look at the rules, common mistakes, and tips to improve our understanding of this key aspect of grammar. Let's get started. All right, let's take a look at slide 2, which is about observing rules on subject-verb agreement. This is a crucial part of mastering English grammar because it helps ensure our sentences are clear and correct. First, I want to emphasize that subject-verb agreement simply means that the subject and the verb in a sentence need to match in number. So, if the subject is singular, the verb should also be singular, and if the subject is plural, the verb should be plural. For example, if I say, "The boy runs," the subject boy is singular, so the verb runs is also in its singular form. Conversely, if I say, "The boys run," the subject boys is plural, so the verb run matches that. It's important to pay attention to the subject, especially when it's separated from the verb by other words or phrases. Sometimes, the subject might be singular or plural, but the sentence structure can trick us into making errors. Another key point is to watch out for tricky subjects like collective nouns or indefinite pronouns, which may seem plural but are actually singular when referring to one group or entity. By understanding and applying these rules, we can make our sentences more accurate and professional, which aligns with our goal of clear communication throughout this presentation. So, in summary, always identify your subject first, and then choose the correct verb form that agrees with it. That's the core idea behind observing rules on subject-verb agreement. Let's take a moment to explore Filipino proverbs. These sayings are more than just words. They are a reflection of our values, wisdom, and culture. They often carry lessons about life, work, family, and community, passed down through generations. By understanding these proverbs, we can gain deeper insight into how Filipinos view the world and navigate everyday challenges. They serve as a reminder of the importance of patience, humility, hard work, and respect. As we continue with this presentation, keep in mind that these proverbs are not just old sayings. They are living expressions that still resonate with us today and can inspire our own attitudes and actions. Let's take a moment to look at some proverbs that teach good behavior. The first one, teaches good behavior to teenagers, highlights the importance of guiding young people with wise sayings that help shape their character. These proverbs serve as lessons that can steer teens toward making better choices. Next, we have "helps God helps those who help themselves." This is a well-known proverb emphasizing the value of taking initiative and being proactive. It reminds us that while God's help is essential, our own effort is just as important in achieving success. Finally, laziness is the sibling of starvation. This vivid metaphor shows us that laziness often leads to hardship and suffering. It underscores the importance of hard work and diligence, reinforcing the idea that neglecting effort can have serious consequences. Connecting these points to our overall theme, they remind us that good behavior, effort, and initiative are key components of a successful and meaningful life. These proverbs aren't just old sayings. They're practical lessons that can guide us and others toward better choices every day. Let's take a closer look at the rules on subject-verb agreement. This is a fundamental part of clear and correct writing. First, remember that the subject and verb must agree in number. Singular subjects take singular verbs and plural subjects take plural verbs. For example, if you say "the student writes," student is singular, so writes is correct. But if you say "the students write," then students is plural, so write is the right choice. Another key point is to watch out for tricky subjects like compound subjects or those separated by words like and or. For instance, "My brother and sister are coming" here because it's two subjects joined by and, use a plural verb. Conversely, with or nor, the verb agrees with the subject closer to it. For example, either the teacher or the students are responsible. Because students is closer, we use are. Connecting this to our overall theme, mastering subject-verb agreement helps us communicate more effectively and professionally. It ensures our ideas are clear and grammatically correct, which is essential in both writing and speaking. So, paying attention to these rules will greatly improve the quality of your communication. Now, let's look at the importance of observing rules on subject-verb agreement. In the examples on the slide, you'll notice that the verbs match the subjects in number. For instance, in our ancestors were value-oriented people, the plural subject, ancestors, pairs with the plural verb, were. Similarly, in God helps those who help themselves, God is singular and takes the singular verb, helps. It's also important to recognize that even in sentences like, a proverb which teaches simple living is my favorite, the subject, proverb, is singular, so it takes the singular verb, is. And in, the people during the pre-colonial period were assertive. People is plural, so it pairs with were. The key rule here is that subjects and verbs must agree in number, singular with singular, plural with plural. This consistency is crucial because it helps keep our sentences clear and correct. By following these rules, we ensure our communication is precise, which is especially important as we explore the richness of language and its proper usage throughout history and culture. Let's look at this table that summarizes some important rules about subject-verb agreement and verb forms. First, on the left side, we have the number of subjects, whether singular or plural. For singular subjects like he, she, or it, the present tense verb usually ends with s or es. For example, she walks or he watches. In the past tense, irregular verbs change form, often ending in or ed, like walked or watched. For plural subjects, such as they or the students, we use the base form of the verb in the present tense, like they walk or the students watch. In the past tense, irregular verbs also change, but the form varies, like they went or the students saw. Now, on the right side, we focus on the be verb. For singular subjects, we say is in the present tense and was in the past tense. For plural subjects, the present tense is are, and the past tense is were. These are fundamental for constructing correct sentences. Let's connect this to the overall theme, accurate communication. Proper subject-verb agreement and correct verb forms help ensure clarity and professionalism in our writing and speech. For example, saying laziness is the sibling of starvation correctly uses is for a singular subject, emphasizing the relationship clearly. Similarly, the students clean the room correctly uses clean with a plural subject. Mastering these rules makes your language precise and effective. Now let's talk about who, that, and which. These words are called relative pronouns, and their form, whether singular or plural, depends entirely on the noun they refer to. So if the noun directly in front of them is singular, then the relative pronoun should be singular as well. Conversely, if the noun is plural, the pronoun should match that in number. This is an important point because it ensures our sentences agree grammatically. Remember, the key here is to look at the noun immediately before who, that, or which, and base the pronoun's form on that noun. This way, your sentences will be clear, correct, and consistent, all essential for strong, professional writing. Now let's look at some examples of how to use who, that, and which correctly. For instance, consider the sentence, "One who spends too much time choosing ends up with cracked wares." Here, the word who is used to refer to a person, the one doing the spending. It's important to recognize that who introduces a clause about a person. In contrast, that and which are typically used for things or groups. For example, if we said, "The book that I borrowed was fascinating," that introduces a clause describing the specific book. Remember, who is used for people, while that and which are generally used for objects or animals. Also, in defining clauses, those essential to the meaning, we often use that. For non-essential additional information, which is usually the right choice, often set off by commas. Understanding these distinctions helps clarify your sentences and makes your writing more precise. It's all about matching the correct relative pronoun to the noun it describes and the kind of clause you're forming. Prepositional phrases. When we talk about prepositional phrases, one important thing to remember is that if they come between the subject and the verb, they don't affect the agreement. So, even if there's a lot of information or details in a prepositional phrase right after the subject, it doesn't change whether we use a singular or plural verb. The key point here is that these phrases are like extra details that don't interfere with our main subject-verb agreement. This concept is really important because it helps us avoid errors when constructing sentences. It connects to our overall theme of understanding sentence structure and making sure our sentences are grammatically correct. So always remember, if a prepositional phrase is between your subject and your verb, it won't influence the number agreement you need to make. Let's take a closer look at prepositional phrases today. As you can see from the examples on the slide, these phrases are quite common in our sentences. For instance, in the sentence, "Faith in God brings us success in life," the prepositional phrases are "in God" and "in life." These phrases help add detail and clarity to the sentence. The key point here is that prepositional phrases always begin with a preposition, like in, on, at, or by, and they include the object of the preposition, which is typically a noun or pronoun. These phrases function to give us more information about time, location, or relationship within the sentence. Understanding how to identify and use prepositional phrases is important because they help us make our sentences more precise and meaningful. They also connect different parts of a sentence smoothly, which ties into our overall theme of effective communication. So, keep an eye out for these phrases as they can really enrich your writing and speaking. All right, now let's move into the practice section. Here, we'll focus on applying what we've discussed so far. I'll walk you through some key points to keep in mind as we practice. First, it's important to thoroughly understand the concepts. Don't just memorize, but really grasp the underlying principles. This helps you adapt and respond more confidently. Next, I want to highlight that practice is about connecting these points to the overall theme of the presentation. Whether you're explaining a process or sharing insights, always tie it back to the bigger picture. This keeps your audience engaged and shows the relevance of what you're discussing. Remember, the goal here is to make the concepts clear and relatable. So, stay conversational, be natural, and focus on making those connections. That way, you'll not only master the material, but also deliver it in a way that's engaging and memorable. Now let's look at some practice sentences to reinforce subject-verb agreement. First, we have IHN sells online products. Here, notice that the subject IHN is singular, so we use the singular form of the verb sells. Next, the students elect their officers. Since students is plural, we match it with the plural form elect. Moving on, Mary is a medical student. Mary is a singular subject, and the verb is correctly agrees with it. Finally, the senators are expected to do their duty. Senators is plural, so we use are to match that. These examples show the importance of making sure the subject and verb agree in number, which keeps our sentences clear and correct. Remember, matching the subject with the correct verb is key to effective communication. Let's take a look at some practical exercises to improve our subject-verb agreement skills. First, consider the saying, "A stitch in time saves 9." Here, the subject, a stitch, is singular, so our verb should match that. Next, whatever you do, think about it 7 times. Notice how whatever you do is singular, so the verb think agrees with that. Moving on, noisy is the can that contains nothing. Though it might sound odd, the subject can is singular, so we use is and contains to match. Then we have, he who does not love his native language is worse than a beast or rotten fish. Here, he is singular, and so is the verb is. Similarly, a monkey which is dressed up is still a monkey. The subject monkey is singular, so is correct. Next, he who speaks too much works too little. Again, the subject he is singular, matching works. The phrase, when the blanket is short, learn to curl up emphasizes that blanket is singular, so is appropriate. The next example, a heavy burden is lightened if everyone participates in carrying it, shows that burden is singular and is lightened agrees. Moving on, a desperate person holds on to a knife edge, where person and edge are singular, so the verbs are singular as well. Finally, a person who is outwardly calm has anger raging inside his stomach. Here, person is singular, matching has. These exercises highlight how important it is for our subjects and verbs to agree in number, which is a key part of clear and correct communication. Connecting this to our overall theme, mastering subject-verb agreement helps us convey our ideas accurately and professionally. All right, now we come to a really important part of the presentation, doing this on your own. This slide is about empowering you to take the concepts we've discussed and apply them independently. The key points here are about understanding the core ideas thoroughly and being confident enough to implement them without constant guidance. Remember, the goal is to connect everything we've talked about to the bigger picture, how these skills and strategies fit into your overall growth and success. Think of this as your opportunity to practice, to experiment, and to make these concepts your own. So I encourage you to take what you've learned, trust your judgment, and step forward with confidence. This is where real progress happens, and I believe in your ability to do just that. All right, for this slide, I want to walk you through what your assignment entails. First, you need to read, copy, and answer the questions based on the paragraph in Task 13.3 on page 31. Make sure to use short bond paper for your responses. Now, let's discuss the proverb, barking dogs seldom bite. It's a good reminder that just because a dog barks doesn't mean it will bite. Dogs bark when they see strangers, but those that growl are actually less likely to bite. This highlights that sometimes talkative or boastful people might not be as practical or dangerous as they seem. They may just be all talk. Finally, the conclusion emphasizes an important grammar point. Prepositional phrases placed between the subject and the verb don't affect agreement. So, even if there are extra words in between, the subject and verb still need to agree in number. Also, words like who, that, and which are considered singular or plural depending on the noun directly in front of them. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding these grammar nuances helps us communicate clearly and confidently, especially when writing or editing sentences. All right, let's move on to our quiz question. This is number 5, and it's a great way to reinforce what we've covered so far. When approaching this question, think about the key concepts we've discussed. Remember how they connect to the bigger picture of the presentation. The goal here is to test your understanding and see how well you've integrated the ideas into your overall knowledge. So, take a moment, focus on the main points we've highlighted, and trust your instincts. This is an opportunity to solidify your learning and ensure you're on the right track. Let's dive into the question now. Let's take a moment to look at some important examples that illustrate the correct use of verb forms. First, we have Filipinos are known to be hospitable. Here, the verb are correctly matches the plural subject Filipinos. It emphasizes a general truth about Filipinos' hospitality. Next, dedication to work is one of the components to be successful. In this case, is links the subject dedication to the complement, highlighting that dedication is essential for success. Moving on, no debt remains unpaid. Notice how remains is in the present tense, showing that debts tend to stay unpaid unless addressed. Then, in God there is pity, the work is with man. This points to the idea that divine compassion exists, but human effort is also necessary. Lastly, he who takes the last slice buys the next cake. This is a fun example of a conditional statement, where the action of taking the last slice implies responsibility for buying the next cake. Overall, these examples remind us how choosing the correct verb form helps us communicate clearly and effectively, especially when expressing general truths, responsibilities, or conditions.